McLean, founder and CEO of Dylan Green, and today I have with me Esther Morales. Thanks for joining me, Esther.
Catherine, it's so wonderful to be here. I love your Greenlight podcast, and I listen to it a lot. It's one of my favorite podcasts.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're based in California?
I am. I'm calling in from Oakland.
Oh, are you getting all that rain?
We did. We got a ton of rain yesterday around, maybe it started around 5.
Yeah.
And it's been okay. Honestly,
Good.
it's not going on. I was expecting much worse. So
Yeah. Yeah, the media made it look like there wasn't going to be an island any longer.
right. And I think Southern California got hit way harder. And I
Yeah.
was worried we would lose power. We didn't. So
Yeah.
overall, I feel like we're in a good place.
Good. Well, for those of you who don't know, you're the executive director of CELI, which is the Clean Energy Leadership Institute. It's an organization that I'm a massive fan of. I learned about through Adam James over at EIP a few years ago. So I really want you to tell us all about CELI and all about your role there.
Okay. So first, I want to tell you the story of CELI, and more than anything, I think CELI is in its 10th year of operations.
Oh my goodness.
So the landscape is changed a lot. And
Okay.
imagine 2013, Adam James and Jackie
That,
Weidman got together and they were really upset about how in the first 4 years of the Obama administration, the Waxman-Markey bill had failed.
mhm, mhm,
And a lot of folks were upset and wondering, I think young people in the clean energy ecosystem at the time were wondering, what can we do? How do we move our agenda forward around
right.
clean energy when we don't have a lot of policy supports in place? And CELI was born then. It held the same name. In April of 2013, Adam and Jackie and about 6 of their other friends, about 8 people, met for the first time at Boeing. I think in the DMV area, in the
Mhm,
office there, and they
mhm,
invited a speaker to speak to them about what that speaker thought should happen, what that speaker's expertise was in the
mhm,
clean energy world. And ultimately, they began to, one of them would ask another speaker to speak the next week, and it evolved. In that year, they actually incorporated it as a nonprofit, and
mhm,
Adam and Jackie tapped a few of the most sort of vigorous and energetic folks who had gone through that first set of speaker engagements to
mhm.
create the next set. And this whole rotation of the fellowship was born. And so CELI was started in the Washington, D.C. area. For the first 4 years, it was only came together in Washington, D.C. And in 2017, Jackie Weidman became the executive director and jump-started a program out here in San Francisco.
Huh.
And so for 4 years, CELI only ever existed in one place. 2017, we moved to 2 locations. And then when Liz Dalton Ramsey came on board in 2018, she began to make some really important changes that are still hold true today. And she ultimately ended up starting CELI's 3rd location in Chicago. When I came on board, the staff had already had plans to start up our 4th city-based location in New York City. I would say CELI, what is incredible about this moment, if we look from 2010 till now, is that we have now, in the last 2 years, the greatest policy pieces have ever been passed around
Mhm,
clean energy at the federal level, and we're seeing more and more at the state level as well. And so
mhm,
we now have the infrastructure bill that was passed. We have the CHIPS and
mhm,
Science Act. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA.
mhm,
And CELI, I think, is closing out its first 10 years and really looking towards the next 10 years to try and
mhm,
understand, given now that we have all of these policy supports, um, what is CELI's role in the broader ecosystem? And I think that we
mhm,
are beginning to put that new story together. I think originally it was, well, we don't have a lot of supports. How can we really support leadership in this area? And now we have way more supports. And I think that we have a moment where we are truly able to actually realize a dream of accelerating our transition. And
Mhm.
in that, CELI's purpose is focused on the people side. So if our mission is to accelerate the clean energy transition to a resilient, decarbonized, and
Mhm.
equitable energy economy, I think within that, the way that we do that, our method is to really focus on the people side of it and to equip
Mhm.
uh, the leadership within that to actually begin to understand more deeply the system side, and then on the leadership development side, begin to get more in touch with their purpose.
Okay. Okay. I noticed that you had worked on the Obama campaign and the PA and the White House and the GOE. Tell me, how did you eventually transition into CELI?
So I see myself as somebody who consistently wants to change systems. And I think actually it
Mhm.
resonates with a lot of people.
Mhm.
So I got my start in organizing. I soon began to run campaigns. And I ended up working for the Obama administration and partly at the Department of Energy, EPA, and at the White House. And at every point in time, I would say my purpose was really to try and understand how do we change these systems to bring about the outcomes that we want to see.
Mhm.
And part of why I'm here at CELI is because leaders have always been developing leaders, bringing people together to do more than you can do as a single person
Right.
is something that's always been part of my past.
Mhm.
When I actually first learned about CELI, I was working at the governor's office here in California at
Mhm.
the Office of Business and Economic Development,
Mhm.
GoBiz, for the Office of Small Business Entrepreneurship in 2020. And CELI, I applied as a fellow and I was accepted as a fellow, and I was incredibly excited to get started as a fellow in our fellowship program. And I believe the stay-at-home order came down March 16th of 2020, and our fellowship started March 20th. And I
Okay.
was there and I basically started working 16-hour days, and I wasn't able to actually take the fellowship. But about a year later, the position opened up, and I felt that it had been so deeply important to me moving to a new job, moving back to California from New York, where I was living, to actually engage with a network of individuals who are as curious to learn in California as I was, and to actually be knitted together sort of in this greater purpose of bringing
Mhm.
clean energy economy, that I felt very compelled to take on this role. And I think, Catherine, that for me, it's been an interesting, I think, crash course over the last 2 years. I've been on
Mhm.
board now for about 2 years. And when I came on board, CELI was facing its greatest expansion
Mhm.
in the 8-year period up until that point. So we had only ever done 3 fellowships. COVID was deeply impacting us. We had always gathered in person in our city-based
Mhm.
cohorts. We had tried this switch to virtual during 2020 like everybody else. And I was given this huge task of expanding to New York, plus a national virtual cohort, plus keeping Chicago, Bay Area, Washington, D.C. running, and launching EDICT, which is our Empowering Diverse Climate Talent program.
Mhm.
And we grew in 2021 from serving 100 fellows to serving 170. And then this past year, we grew from serving 170 fellows to serving 227. And so if you look sort of at the 10-year history of CELI, we have grown really 40% of the high touch programming that we've delivered in the last 10 years has been done in the last 2 years, which I think is a huge accomplishment. And it really speaks to the importance of clean energy education, the importance of people developing a community of practice, and more than anything, the fact that the economy now is at a place where our institutions are not actually meeting the needs of the clean energy
Yep.
workforce. So our,
Correct.
yeah. So I think that we've come a long way, and I've come into CELI at a very interesting point in time. And um, as a grassroots organizer, really focusing on racial justice from the very beginning of my career, and
Mhm.
um, helping, being part of that huge team that elected the first Black president. I feel like it's always been a value of mine to look at, um, you know, diverse impacts, the way that we are actually opening up access, the way that we are creating more equitable pathways into a clean energy workforce and into leadership development pathways.
This is why I really wanted to get you on the program, because so many people ask me, they're like, "Where do you get your candidates from? Like, how do you source candidates? They're so hard to find." And I always felt like somebody that had gone through that CELI fellowship program, we're going to talk about that next, is really, in my mind, like a stamp, like a gold star. Like, I know that that's a good candidate because they've gone through that program, because you've obviously vetted them to go in that program in the first place. And then they've gone through that program. And I think also as you know, I'm very passionate about net diversity. So getting these, getting diverse candidates into the clean energy industry. And I have a lot of clients who are like, oh, we want to do that, but we don't have time to train them, right? This is like the number one thing I hear. So this is the fact that you're doing this fellowship. It gives you're sort of taking on a little bit of that responsibility to get these future leaders up and running for these companies. So please talk a little bit about the fellowship program and what it entails so people are aware.
Okay, yeah. So the fellowship program is, I think that we're really, we're making changes often to
Mhm.
respond to the data that we receive in the previous years. So, um, I think that the last 3 years, so much of our work has been virtual, which
Yes.
in part has allowed greater access,
Mhm.
from a lot of different, folks from parts of the country that wouldn't otherwise have tapped into CELI's programming. So,
Right.
folks from Houston or from Colorado or from, um, the Southwest or from Southern California. And so I think that part of access and equity has to do with connection to communities really across this country. And I think
Right.
that one of our primary purposes is to continue to sustain that access and actually expand it. So
Mhm.
what we're going to see in the coming 18 months, Catherine, is a little bit different than what we've been doing over the last 2 years.
Okay.
Um, so I think that broadly, CELI ran 2 fellowships a year for, up through, as I said, 2019 or 2018, and then we moved to a 1 fellowship per year model.
Mhm.
And that was, we implement that 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we are now, we now are going to open up our doors on January 17th for applications to roll in, and we are kicking off this year's first fellowship in September. And then from there on, we really hope to do a 2 fellowship per season, if you will, 2 fellowship cycle per year, because I think that one of the purposes around expanding access to clean energy education involves both keeping the current programming in our current cities, but ideally being able to expand much more to
Right.
other cities. And
Right.
so this year we're looking at doing our city-based cohorts in the fall, and then in January, February of 2024 through June of 2024, really focusing on our virtual cohorts to try to
Okay.
hit the country that we haven't accessed. And it will actually increase the number of fellows that we can serve per
Right.
year. So moving from 227 to about 400 per year. And
Okay.
then in terms of our actual curriculum,
Mhm.
we take fellows through a 5 module set of sessions, and each module, I'm sorry, has about 3 sessions in it. So we start off with energy markets and energy finance. We move into new technologies. We look at deep decarbonization. We look at policy, and then we move into what we call social adaptation.
Mhm.
And Energy justice is a new framework that we've worked really hard to incorporate into our curriculum, and that we're still working on improving. And instead of having it as its own module, we are trying to work um, readings, speakers, and actual sessions really focused on the various aspects of energy justice, which I can go into a little bit more, but into each of these modules so that it
Mhm.
is a module in and of itself, but it's really incorporated. I mean, we can do, I think we could do an entire fellowship just looking at the breakdown of what energy justice means in all of these areas. Uh,
Right.
but we don't have that time, and so we're really right now focused on integrating it even more deeply.
Okay.
And yeah,
Amazing. What's the third session?
with well, what I was going to say, the third, so I did
Or
the five
the third
module.
module. Sorry.
So we have, I'll do, so we have 5 modules that we bring into the fellowship curriculum, um, and within that, we have 3 sessions per
Gotcha.
month,
Gotcha.
approximately.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But the
Okay.
other part I didn't talk about, Catherine, was the leadership development
Okay.
curriculum. And this is something that Liz worked really hard to bring to CELI, and that our board member, Eric Martin, who is, he's been on the board for a while, and he runs Adaptive Change Advisors, which is based on bringing a particular leadership development approach, an adaptive leadership development approach,
Mhm.
um, to the world, which is it is something that I learned about when I first came to CELI, and I think it's been
Mhm.
incredibly useful. So leadership, we run our leadership development sessions in on our Saturdays for the most part. And these sessions are intended to help our fellows really connect with their purpose more deeply. I think they're aimed at helping fellows try to understand how they are becoming change makers and leaders, how they navigate the uncertainties of tomorrow. The
Right.
clean energy leadership, I mean, clean energy leadership, I think more than a lot of other sectors, is really facing this rapidly evolving um, world. And I think that in order to understand, how to move an idea forward, or how to actually transform a system that's blocking what you're trying to do, it's really important to be able to step back and reflect on an
Mhm.
approach that will actually help you become a better leader in dealing both with your day to day and in thinking through like how to move mountains really in the future.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier about EDICT, and I'm a big Devin Hampton fan. So tell us more about EDIC and the internship and how it came about and how it differs from the CELI Fellowship Program.
Yes. So Devin Hampton sits on CELI's board,
Mhm.
and Devin was the co-founder of EDICT. And in the wake of the George Floyd protests in 2020,
Mhm.
Devin took to LinkedIn and really talked about his experience as being
Mhm.
a Black man, a Black CEO in the clean energy economy. And he put a challenge out to the world.
Yeah.
And Jason Lee,
Mhm.
uh, one of the co-founders of EDICT, stood up in that moment and said, Devin, how can I help you? And Devin said, what we really need is a program that will actually focus on diverse talent, give people hands-on experience, and bring folks into clean tech. So he got together with Sarah Chandler at Montel Accelerator,
Mhm.
and with, Liz and Becca at CELI. And this happened sort of before I came on board in 2020. And when I came on board, the board had approved
Mhm.
EDICT as a program that we were running, and I got to work with Elemental Accelerator and another organization, FutureMap, run by Shruti, who we all worked together. I would be remiss not to mention Rosina Conchwala, who currently
Mhm.
works with CELI as the EDICT director. And Rosina has been formative in designing the curriculum. And what EDICT is a business workforce partnership. So Elemental, FutureMap, and CELI all play different roles in this partnership. CELI's main role is to develop a mini CELI fellowship curriculum, if you will, so a clean energy education curriculum that supports and bolsters interns over a 10-week period. And the interns go through an application and selection process. They're
Mhm.
interviewed by employers that agree to work with Elemental Accelerator around a community of practice looking at equity and access in their companies. And
Mhm.
they hire interns into clean energy jobs over a 10-week period. And the interns, for the most part, are sophomores, juniors, or recent graduates
Mhm.
in college. And they may even be a year or 2 years out of college. But the idea
Mhm.
is to actually support talent that is interested in pursuing a career in clean energy, but doesn't actually know what that means. And part
Yep.
of what CELI's unique value that we bring to the partnership is that we of course are connected to almost 1,000 fellows at this point who are practitioners in the clean energy ecosystem.
Yeah.
They're able um, to be worked into our 10-week curriculum as speakers, as coaches, if you will, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, as people that the interns can actually develop a connection with, interview, talk to them about their real world experience in moving and navigating a career through clean energy.
This is really interesting to me because I didn't realize this was the level that you all were doing this at. Because when I think of CELA, I think one of the reasons why it hits so close to home with me is because I got into clean energy when I was 30 as like a second chapter, I always say. And I think when I see CELI folks, it seems like they have had some years of experience, some career before they then go into the program. So it's nice with this EDIC internship. It looks like you're now also working with some more junior folks. So that's great.
Yeah, folks who may have actually, they may be mission driven and interested in clean energy, but they have zero experience. Like they may
Right.
have programming skills or comm skills.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So you mean they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do when they were in high
right,
school? Well, that's
right.
so bizarre.
Or yeah, well, right, right.
Like
And I think
95% of us.
right, and yeah, and I think people don't even the energy ecosystem is so complex, and
Yeah.
it's very difficult if you're not in it to actually understand what are all the opportunities
Yeah.
available.
100%.
So this is really
Definitely.
meant to make the energy ecosystem less opaque. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think as time goes on, it's getting more and more complex, which is fantastic. Like there's so many positives to that. But you're right. Like I have so many candidates who are just like, I don't know where in this like ecosystem I'm trying to, get myself into. I just know I want to like be involved and I'm mission driven. So this is really awesome. That you guys are addressing that. Uh so, from conferences, workshops, and webinars to the fellowships to book clubs, CELA has a lot going on. What are you most looking forward to in 2023?
I am really looking forward to community building. I think that over the last year, so I would say the impact of COVID has been inescapable. I worry that because we did a lot of our programming online, that we weren't able to build the deepest relationships. The reason that CELI is actually known, its reputation is really built on the folks that built really deep relationships
Mhm, mhm.
early on, and I worry that we weren't adequately creating the opportunities to bring people together in person. And I think we're finally out of that insanity of the last 3 years, and I feel very focused on bringing our community together again.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think that, you know, I think in the early days, speakers would come out once a week and everybody would get together once a week. And I'm not sure there's appetite for that, but I certainly want to make sure that whether we are running our in-person city-based cohorts or whether we are running our virtual cohorts, that we're really focusing on more hikes, more walks around Lake Merritt, more picnics. I think that we're trying to bring in, I would say I'm trying to bring in more more food and not necessarily like making everything, all our community building happening at really noisy bars where you can't hear each other. But I think that I'm really trying to look for. I have a dream that at some point we can do something like, big camping trips or big hikes together. That we can do something like a climate ride, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can build that this year. I think that's
But
the here to the
But
whole.
I really, really, really like your approach this year of like the 50-50, like rebuilding that sort of in person in those four core cities, but also giving people the ability that wouldn't aren't in those four cities an opportunity to get involved in this. You're
Yeah,
kind of great,
yeah,
great
and
idea. Who came up with
yeah.
that idea? Did you come up with
Oh,
that idea?
no, I mean, it's there, right? It's like, I can't take credit for anything. Especially in the Bay Area, we're so lucky because a hike is a second away, right? And
Yeah.
one can come and it's free and it doesn't cost money. And
Yeah.
so in that way, we really we want to bring back what I think the in-person part that made CELI just so valuable. So
Yeah.
that's for folks looking to have nerdy conversations about energy with
Yeah.
other folks,
Yeah.
who are great and nice and kind and
Yeah.
fun.
But
Um,
the networking piece
yeah,
is so, so, so important, especially if you're taking people into these programs that aren't from the space.
yeah,
Like half of the battle is just knowing the right people to speak to, right? So it's like just having that network is so invaluable. So how can people get involved with CELI either as like an employer or fellow or otherwise?
so employers can uh, actually look at their staff and try and understand who would really benefit from
Mhm,
going through our CLI program, and
mhm,
then support any of their employees to get involved. If they're a company that has already done that, that has fully taken advantage of CLI's fellowship program, we would love to do a partnership with any company that is looking to support leadership development in clean energy through our corporate sponsorship program, corporate partners
mhm.
program. Um, and then obviously we are super excited. We're expanding our city-based cohorts from approximately 38 to 50 this year. So we're adding more spots. So we will have, if you're looking to apply as a fellow, I think that we have more spots available this year in each of our city-based cohorts than ever before. And then we are running our virtual programming in January through June of 2024. So
Mhm,
I don't
mhm.
want folks to forget about that.
Thank you so much, Esther, for your time and for sharing all the great work that you guys are doing over at CELI. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me on the green light, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.